A re-welcome for everyone who's joining us. And as we see the attendance number change, we will be adding in our attendance link and our resource link. And on our resource link, you will find the Zoom link for all of our sessions, so you don't have to look in more than one place. Remember where you put it, as well as resources from this session and following sessions. And there was a pre-session in August. If you didn't have a chance, that's fine. To attend that, you can see the resources that we shared then. So welcome, everyone. We will be sharing out resources and other things as well, but we also just wanted to start off with a quote from Louisa Moats from an article that she wrote called "When Older Students Can't Read." And I think this is really valid and valuable for us to keep in mind as we think about our older students in middle and high schools, particularly. When our older students, our older poor readers can learn to read if they are taught the foundation language skills they missed, and if they have ample opportunity to apply those skills in meaningful text reading. I think about how often when our kids are struggling, they get less practice because they're avoiding it. Okay, we don't have, Effie, I have you. We're going to do the language acknowledgement today.
Yeah, so the one you see here is the one from the state of Washington. And I'm gonna just take a minute here. And I know it's a little bit long, but I'm gonna go ahead and read it because that is the way I was trained, that these were to be presented orally and not just visually. For those of us in the Olympia area, and so that's coming from OSPI, we acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Squaxin Island tribe, descendants of the maritime people who live in the prospered along the shores of the southernmost inlets of the Salish Sea for untold centuries. We ask that the participants of this meeting honor the tribal lands on which each of you are located today, from the lands of the tribes located on the coast to the tribes in the Central Plateau to those along the Columbia shores, Spokane and other rivers, and to those living in the foothills of the Cascade Mountains. We acknowledge the commitment of all Pacific Northwest tribes to the resurgence of their traditional ways and their respect and protection of all people, not only those who are living, but those who have gone before and who are yet to be born. So in many of these statewide meetings, we offer the opportunity to enter into the chat and just take a moment of quiet time as we're doing that, as to the lands that you are physically joining us from. So I am joining you from the lands of the Cowlitz. And so if you take a moment to do that, that would be lovely.
I'm from the Olympia area, so I'm represented on the screen. See a lot of Cowlitz. We have Kalispell, Nooksack and Lumi, Puyallup. Thank you for sharing, everyone. Monroe. I do have, not in this slide deck, but I will get for us. I think we have it on the resource guide. Let me see if I can go grab it. A link where you can find out where the lands on which you reside.
I have it in some of my other slides.
I usually do keep it in here. Let me take a quick look. We'll have to grab it later and put it on. I can see it on this one. We'll add that, make a note to add that later. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move us along to our other belief. I think I put you on this one too, Effie.
Okay, so this one I will go ahead and let you read from the screen. Just kind of think for a moment about some of the words that might jump out at you on this one, and feel free to enter those into the chat as well. For me, it's equitable access. I see empowers students, supports and empowers, anti-racist policy, undoing equitable access. I'm trying to read these without clicking them. It's nice it's not coming up giant like it was on my other computer. Educational justice, these are all fantastic elements to pull out of that, because it's a very dense paragraph and there's a lot to unpack there, but above all, keeping students at the center of the work. Great, thank you. And this one as well is adapted from Puget Sound ESD and the Aussie work. And I'm going to have you go ahead and read this one as well. I will actually read it aloud. We acknowledge the pain and trauma resulting for 400 years of racism in the United States. We stand with our communities of color. We are committed to leading with racial equity. We are committed to supporting the creation of culturally responsive and anti-racist learning communities. We offer a moment of silence and honor the space for people from communities of color to respond to this acknowledgement first. And then we invite accountability and partnership. So I'm going to take a look at the chat here while we have this moment. Okay, thank you, Alicia.
Thank you. All right, we just have some Zoom tips and reminders that we just want to share with you. And I think most everyone who's joined us has put your name after your Zoom name. But if you could do that for us, it would be really helpful so we can see who's joining us and where you're joining from. It helps us have some context. It also helps when we make breakout rooms, especially if you are in a team and you want to be in a room together. Please put that into the chat box. We can make sure we are making breakout rooms that respond to your needs. So if you haven't done that for a while, it's been a while since if you're Zoom rusty, you'll need to go to the participants list, which you'll see on the toolbar, and you go to your name. And when you click it, you'll notice it says more. You go right next to your name, and then one of the options there is rename. The other way, I think it was Effie mentioned earlier, if you look at your picture up in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little blue box with 3 white dots. Open that up and that'll be a rename. That's also where you can hide self-view so you can't see yourself in the mirror. I find that very distracting. You are all muted upon entry, but feel free to unmute at any point in time to contribute, question, be a part of the conversation. There has been a request for making a group of special ed teachers. So if you wouldn't mind, I'll make a note of the person who has requested. If there anybody else wants to be in a group of special education teachers, please put that into the chat box and we'll add that on for you as well. Okay, so then the reactions is also where you find your raised hand ability, because if you're not one of the 6 people I can see at the moment, I can't see you doing this, and you'll need to raise your electronic hand. And then I've taken out the middle row, so you don't need to worry about that. The top reactions just fade away. The raised hand you can raise and lower, as can we. And then the next part is the annotations. There will be opportunities to engage by writing on the screen. Multilingual, I'll add that as well. So if anybody wants to be ML, thank you, Lindsay. And anybody who already has VPS, I'll put into the VPS Heights room. Okay, and then we have also the annotations. If you haven't annotated yet, it is a fun way to engage. And I like to say it is a privilege, not a right. Although I haven't yet figured out how to take it off in the middle of a meeting. I have to work on that because yesterday I had somebody drawing things that were inappropriate. So I ended up having to remove that person from the meeting because that person wouldn't stop. I had to keep deleting things. Julia, you know where I was going with that. That's what's the second time it's happened to me. And the first time was back when we first started Zoom meetings. So I was very surprised to be having that happen again. When you do things that are free, anyone can jump in. You never know what's going to happen. But nonetheless, I think it's a great way for us to highlight, to underline, to connect, to draw attention to things. I often do it as a participant when someone puts a list and says, which one of these have you felt? I will give them away. I'll add it on. It's also a more anonymous than putting into the chat box. So there's another way that you can do that. So that's through these stamps. You'll see several different kinds of stamps if you click that, different ways of indicating and then drawing. And if you are drawing or writing, you can change what you're coloring with or writing with this format. So we will also be providing some guides, some guideposts and resources for you. So the guideposts will kind of clue you and clue us into things that we want to make sure that we draw attention to. So for example, we will have some handouts, things that you can print up and take with you. We will have engagement opportunities, time for reflect, practical strategies, things that you can do right away with your students. And of course, a lot of electronic resources, and those are all on the resource page that I put already in the chat box for you, along with the attendance link. The attendance link is for getting clock hours, but also it's good to have, if you don't want clock hours, you don't have to get them, but you do have to sign in the attendance link because if you change your mind later, decide you want clock hours and you hadn't signed in the attendance link, then we don't have evidence that you were here. So please do it so just once per time of us together. And then resources here, I'm going to put that resource doc in for you again, unless my colleagues have done so. Thank you, no problem. We have someone joining in as soon as they can. Okay, we've got another, I'll look through those when it comes time for organizing rooms. Adding those notes in for us. Let me grab our resources for us again for you. So that everyone has access to both the attendance link and the resources. There we go. Thank you, Nina. All right. So as we work together, we have some tips and requests we think that would help as we share and learn with each other. And obviously, I mean, the engagement piece is for your own, whatever we put into something, what we get is what we get out of it. But as we learn from each other, we need to be hearing each other. And so that's the listening openly or respecting each other's perspectives, but sharing openly as well. I can't learn from you if I don't hear from you. I don't know. We all, in order to hear and honor and learn from each other, these are some things that we think could be useful. And feel free to add something that we're missing into the chat box, or put out something that you think that you can stamp or you can connect it with one of these as well. The expect and accept non-closure is that this is a year-long, we're meeting monthly throughout the whole school year. I think May might be our session that we have planned. But nonetheless, I'm still learning about this, and I've been learning about this for a very long time. There's always more to learn. And so that's where I feel like the non-closure piece is that we will be talking about a little bit each time, and we'll review it next time, and we'll continue to engage with these topics. The technology, we have lots of tools for you. And I think the most important one is giving ourselves and each other grace as we engage together. We will be having breakout time opportunities. We'll be joining into a chat. We'll be doing the Jamboard. I'll put that link, or maybe Nina can grab that and put that in for you again. On the Jamboard, excuse me, you will find, and I'll do a quick little tour for us. Let me grab my mouse here. This is our Jamboard. That was our resource page, if you haven't gotten there yet, where you can see up at the top our contact information, the Jamboard, our Zoom link, some additional learning opportunities. On our Jamboard, the first frame is just the frame from the beginning so that we have all landed on the same page. We don't have everyone here with us tonight. We'll give you, when we talk about introductions, we'll give you that. And this is a place for you to share with us, let us know where you're joining from in introductions. And then frame 3 is a parking lot for ideas or questions that you might have that you want to bring up at some point later on. You're welcome to put them into the chat, but this is an anonymous opportunity if you'd like to put things there as well. Okay, with that, we're going to start off with a getting to know you, or I guess kind of a shifting to the right brain. I'm going to pass it to Nina. Do you want me to put that link in the chat box for you, Nina?
Well, yeah, sure. Thank you. So this is just a activity that we're going to participate in just real quickly, and then something that you could engage in with your students. I love to showcase images at the beginning of class or as we transition to a new activity when I'm with my students in my classroom. And these are one of them. So this one is a coding conundrum. It's called Cupcake or Chihuahua. And what we would like you to do is either use the annotation where you can use a stamp, or you can just add into the chat, which image do you connect with the most and why? And then think about how this would lend itself to a lesson on perception and point of view. So I'll give everybody a moment to pick which cupcake or chihuahua they feel like they connect with the most.
I put the trio because that's us, the three of us working together today.
Oh, I love that one. That's very cute. Someone said cupcake because I can't eat a chihuahua. That's good to
Someone said
good.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh my.
I love that. And that's a great idea. Have them numbered when you're doing them with students. It's a lot easier. Fourth across. That is the cutest. Thanks. I see hearts coming on. I see circles. Someone checked marked the bottom left chihuahua, which when I first look at that one, I see cupcake.
I see a chihuahua who's got a lot going on, and I see some bags under his eyes. So I feel for whoever put that check mark there.
Chihuahua, because you have 7 dogs. Wow, I have 3. I thought that's wonderful.
I just
always
think those
want
are absolutely
more.
hilarious. How, especially the
Yes.
first one up left.
So muffin is correct. So the reason why I use cupcake is if you click the link that we added to the chat, this is something that was used. They had a meme, and someone who's in the coding world decided this would be a great way to test our AI capabilities. So looking at all the different, like Microsoft was one of them, Google, all of that. They presented these images and to see which one they would pick was if they would choose it correctly. And so the link is in there. Luckily, most of those mechanisms are able to distinguish between what they would call a muffin or a chihuahua, but they did have a hard time between cupcake or muffin or cake. So different people call things differently. And I guess this is just an opportunity to kind of engage with your class or other people in the room and share your different perceptions. So
Thanks,
thank you
Nina.
for engaging. Yeah, of course. And I love that you guys, because you're hungry. Now I'm hungry too, right? You have to pick them wisely.
We'll clear all that up. I mentioned the Jamboard, so this is an opportunity for you to add in. If you'd like, you can add in not just your name, but your role, your grade level, especially if you want to be in a role room for ML, you can add it into your Zoom name, or if you want to be with special ed, add that to your Zoom name, wherever you want to, so that I can help make those breakout rooms. That would be very helpful. But also what grade level, what content area, what brings you here. And while you're doing some of that, we're going to share a little bit about ourselves and our backgrounds and what brings us to this work, so that you can get to know why we're here and why we also have some teammates who are not here with us. So the 3 of us are the ones on the top. We'll talk a little bit about our teammates along the bottom. I'm the upper left. Obviously, my name's Alicia Roberts Frank, and I work for ESD 113 in Olympia area. I've been here for over 7 years now. I was originally an elementary teacher, but that's not what I prepared for. I prepared to be a high school English teacher, and then I prepared to be a TESOL, an EFL teacher, actually. English as a foreign language or a second language, because I taught English in Peace Corps. And then I got a job at an elementary school for kids with dyslexia. So I went into special education, and then I went to middle and to high, and that's where I spent the most time, was in high school. But it was really, I felt illustrative or illuminative to have both the elementary and the middle experience. When I got to high school, it was interesting to have seen that whole path. I also taught higher ed people to become teachers, and so I have that perspective as well. And I now have two kids, one with autism and one with dyslexia, one of whom is now in high school, a freshman, and the other is a seventh grader. So I'm now a parent of of the secondary age as well, as I think we all are. Effie, I'm going to pass it to you, and then Nina.
Hi there, I'm Effie Trial. I am the Regional Literacy Coordinator, is my primary title for ESD 112 in Vancouver, Washington. And I do also work very closely with our Title I directors and our multilingual directors as the lead on that work. Some ESDs have another person who does that. We don't. I take on working in that role as well. Do other duties assigned at the ESD, one of which is Saturday I get to go and to the award ceremony for the Teacher of the Year. I coordinate that program down in Vancouver and for our region. And then my background is primarily elementary, but in the role coming into the ESD and some of the work I did prior, it lends itself to K-12 and really thinking about that. My classroom experience is kindergarten and second grade. And then I was a reading first coach and a multilingual specialist, did my admin, other intensive intervention at the district office, working for Vancouver Public Schools for about 13 years before coming to the ESD. In another meeting, I was thinking about the dates, and that was 2014. So going into 10 years in July with the ESD, working on all kinds of projects statewide and regionally, and with individual districts and individual teachers. It runs the gamut of the support. So happy to be here and be a resource, and have an MTSS RTI background as well. So thanks.
Thanks, Effie. Hi, everybody. I'm Nina Sotomayor Andrew. I started out as a middle school intensive reading plus teacher is what we were called. I've taught middle school through high school is my primary teaching range. And I worked as a reading English language arts teacher. Our goal was to have students who were over 100 kids, I would say, in a year, who were not at reading level, maybe 2 grade levels below. And our goal was to push them at reading level or above, right? To prepare them for the next year, because what if they don't have us again? So that was my primary beginning. And then I became a literacy coach and a data coach, first at the school level, then at the district level, and then at the state level. So I've been doing that for over a decade now. I moved over to Washington in 2014. I am a Husky grad, so I'm just happy to be back home. This torture being so far away. And I've been working as a literacy coordinator and support for ESD 114 for the last 2 or 3 years. Before that, I was with OSSI, which I had the privilege of working across the state with lots of ESDs and districts as a literacy coach and support and data coach as well. My passion is middle school, high school students. I just love it. And, but I've coached now at the elementary range, even into collegiate level. So it's been exciting to do this work. And I'm really excited to engage with you guys today as we get some new learnings and share some of our own resources with everybody. So thanks for participating and being here.
Thank you. All right. So we're just going to start off with the framework and the lens through which we're looking at as we work this. And I forgot to, let me go back. We mentioned, neither of us mentioned, and none of the 3 of us mentioned our partners. So at the beach, that's Heidi Ayala. She's OSPI secondary ELA, who don't think she's with us next month either. I'm not sure, but they come as they can, and they also co-plan. And so whether or not they're here with us, they're also in the background, or they are also offering their support, and we have their contact information at the end. Terry Hernandez from ESD 105 is a regional literacy coordinator like Effie. And then Rebecca Estock on the end is with OSPI Integrated Student Supports. All right, so going back to our framework and really what we're looking through, the lens through which we're looking at this work is understanding that really in order to reach all students, the purple box at the end, excuse me, we need to make sure that we have the systems and structures, and we have supports for those at each ESD. We have the regional implementation coordinators from MTSS who work on the system side. We're focusing more, as you heard a lot, both Effie and Nina, and talking about and Terry, regional literacy coordinators. We work on the instruction and curriculum side because you really need both. And notice, and this is where our focus is in this series, is that instruction and curriculum. But if you notice the times, the multiplication symbol there is because if you are missing either one of these pieces, you're going to have 0. You have to have both of them in order to have that strong content. So we are happy that there are others who are working on the systems while we work on the instruction and curriculum piece. So this is the outline of the series. We're starting today looking at standards and assessment. This is what you normally look at the beginning of the year, right? We'll look at what do you use to help get to know your students, having some opportunities to look at what are the most essential standards, where do we begin in this process? And there are still opportunities to register. So if you want to pass this on to others, and we will continue to, people can jump in at any point in time. So here's the whole layout of the land. I can't remember if that's in the PD Enroller or not. So if you want to take a screenshot of this, but this is also spelled out on the resources guide for you. And again, feel free to share that as well. So you can see where we're going for the rest of the year. And I think that it's always a good idea to see where we're going. However, this is a little bit flexible. If there are other needs for this group, let us know and we can make some adjustments along the way. So when I have today's agenda, this will also be a typical agenda, although I think that we will be massaging things based on the need of the group. What we will be doing and start in the beginning is having some opportunities for you to connect with each other, to perhaps review what we've talked about in the past and when it comes to other classes. Today it will be on what you've done so far regarding your implementation in this case of getting to know your students and what do you do, what have you done up till this point in your school year, because it's only a few weeks in. Then we'll have some new learning opportunities talking about standards and assessments. We'll give you some opportunities to practice or at least talk to each other before our closure and the next steps. So today, I think Effie's going to start us off on some review about the simple view of reading today, and the science of reading and how this applies to secondary students.
Okay, next slide. Okay, thank you. Let's put it all up there. Okay, so for those of you that were with the group in August on this training and potentially other previous trainings, this should be familiar to you. And if not, that is okay. That is why we are here. And I was actually not able to participate in the August training, but I have done quite a bit of work on this with Alicia and other colleagues. And so thinking about this language comprehension, and I want you to pay close attention, like she mentioned earlier about the multiplication sign. And so times multiplied by decoding word recognition. And so if one of those is a 0 and missing, you will not be able to proceed with strong reading comprehension. So this is just a way to explain it in the most basic sense to folks, and linking about that it's not just all about word reading, because you will stumble on those people that say, science of reading is all phonics. Well, no, let's look at the simple view of reading. Let's see where language comprehension falls into this and that this is needed in addition to the words that we do and the work that we do. So take a look at that just for a moment. And
Effie, I just remember we did create a poll, which we did obviously write in
yeah.
the notes that we created a poll on whether or not people took any classes last year,
last year or-
whether they attended the August session. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that as people are thinking about the simple view of reading. If this makes sense at a good time for you. Although the next slide is a lot busier. Do you want me to put it now or on the next slide?
No, I don't want to. Yeah, I want to wait to.
All right.
To the,
I'll launch the poll first.
Yeah.
Then. So I did put a question in the chat, whether or not anyone was new to the science of reading / structured literacy. And we had a couple thumbs up and someone saying this is new. So looks like this is new to most people who are putting into the chat. So awesome.
Looks like most people are new from even August.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, a couple attended. Okay, that makes it less of a review and more of a
new learning.
That's
all right. Well, we do have a little bit of a let's see how many people have responded so far. 100%. You are. Wait,
great.
No, 80%, but still, nonetheless, I'm going to have to go ahead and share so that people can see the.
Yeah, 88 and 12 though. It's 100%. The second one is 88 and 12. The first question was 100%.
Of the 25 out of 31%. That's good. So nonetheless, when we look at, looks like the majority, nobody here attended the August session, so new people. Couple of people attended some of these classes last year. And then when you look at the third question, we have all across the board. So it's great to know that we have a heterogeneous grouping, that there are some people who have no background. And so it's important to know that this is going to be new for some people, and some people have heard it a little bit, and some people are further along. Okay. So Effie, do you want to spend more time here or go on to the next one that breaks?
Let me read number 3. I forgot I had to scroll down. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. We're
All
good.
right. Here we go then.
Okay, so this one has more to look at, and hopefully your screen and your eyesight is a little bit stronger than mine. I have it on 2 screens here, so it's larger. So I'm going to be looking to my right at the screen that's bigger. So looking at, let's start with the reading and kind of looking at that and looking again at word recognition and decoding.
More attention here with the word recognition. Actually, I'm going to use blue for that. Go ahead. Or I'll use red. It doesn't matter.
And looking at thinking about our standards as well as we move along the continuum in your pre-K into first grade, thinking about print concepts and thinking about, that we read left to right, that we use letters to make sounds. It's a very basic sense. It's even, there's elements that are K into 1, but that pre-K, and really this is what, when my daughter was little, and she is now 17, was going to, my husband took her to a whole lot of library times at the Multnomah County Library, and really some of the basic pieces that they work in a story time is part of print concepts. So we're not, and if you're teaching reading, that this is a capital, or I mean teaching, early grades, this is lowercase. So that very basic piece. And then moving down further into phonological awareness, including phonemic awareness, as that is part of the phonological awareness umbrella. And so your isolated sounds are part of it. So thinking about the continuum there, I'm growing. And then we're not going to get deep into those pieces on what the umbrella is, but thinking about that as far as our standards go as well. And then moving into basic and advanced decoding. So you can see where the line of blue starts and it starts going. And so advanced decoding, because sometimes we think about decoding and folks will be like, okay, we get to CVC words, consonant, vowel, consonant words, but actually it's the multisyllabic words that become our advanced decoding. And that's where you all come into play working with middle school and beyond in many cases, is that we'll see kids in the foundational skills go up to 5th grade, but oftentimes middle and high school teachers don't look at the foundational skills as closely as an elementary school teacher. And oftentimes students haven't mastered everything there. So that would be in your advanced decoding of that. And then fluency, reading with accuracy, rate, and expression. If you're familiar with the term prosody, so reading with expression, reading with a good rate, reading the punctuation and not just busting through it in a 1-minute timing. That so working on the automaticity of reading. And so there you can watch how that kind of, and I'm going to go a lot deeper into this reading one than I will the writing one today. And then thinking about this, look at those that we just went through and how they're kind of bound in grade level expectations, but look at the one below when we're talking about language comprehension. We are all gaining and learning vocabulary and language every day. Whether you're an infant or an older person, I feel like as long as we are exposed to language, there's always new language coming at us. Think about all the different terms with AI. You know, this was all new vocabulary to us, most of us in the last year or so. So thinking about all the different pieces that we gather every day. Language comprehension, so oral language comprehension, including vocabulary. This is very important too, thinking about, I know we have multilingual specialists with us today. Background knowledge, thinking about the topic, thinking about building that level of understanding, and then listening to reading comprehension, so that receptive skills, and that we eventually turn into productive skills as we speak. We're listening and then responding. And so moving into reading comprehension, and then all of our elements that help us comprehend with language with that. So ongoing, and the others at the top, they're ongoing, but it's refined. And you can see where the little line is that carries through, where the others are. Yeah. And then I know there's a lot more to that, but as we go through these sessions, this is just kind of like an overview visual for you. Looking at the writing, and I just want to have you take a look at that one. And I'm not going to go over it as detailed because our focus is reading here, but it is literacy as well. So thinking about where that work continues, and conventions, see the third one down. It becomes refined. I know when I write, there are certain conventions I find that I'm going back and fixing and adding and making my sentences more complex depending on what I'm doing. And then going down further to translation skills. And just kind of read through that, the grammar, the sentence structure, the writing process, text structure. For the region in 112, at this point, I don't know if I can open it up beyond. I will be doing a book study on the writing rope. If you're interested in that, let me know and I can get you the information. The reason I say it's regionally to 112 is I need to be able to get the book to you, and I can't afford to mail books, so I can courier books within the region. But if you have a book already and want to do that, that was the writing rope. So thinking about all these elements that go along with it. Okay, that's a lot on that slide. So Alicia, anything else to?
I was noticing some wheels turning or someone kind of counting. So I just want to open up to the group and see if there are any thoughts you have. I love how this has the not only the grade levels, but also the fact that this is something we're going to continue to work on when it comes to more advanced decoding skills and thinking about, I mean, for example, the word epitome. I might be able to sound it out when I see it, but it looks like epitome. And I have to connect it to my background knowledge, my topic knowledge, my vocabulary knowledge for me to be able to accurately realize its epitome, or my understanding of the fact that it's a French word, or what I probably has some Greek influence in there, wouldn't it? So I definitely think about those with and I think that
Everything has a Greek influence. I'm the Greek in the group here. Effie is not my real name. Effie is my real name. So Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 on this past Sunday. So I'm good. And there you go.
I also think about how you might have seen me drawing on the line initially that most of us are working with students in 6 through 12, and we assume that they have these foundational skills of their phonological awareness, and that we always think, oh, they've got their decoding skills. Really? They might still be struggling this, especially those of us who are special education background, some of or who are working with kids who are multilingual learners, and they're learning to decode in English. Maybe they don't have the same sounds in their language that we do in English. So there may be various reasons why our students may not have look like they ought to on this chart. I think it was Nadia. I think you were the one I was noticing thinking about this. Is there anything you want to bring up?
Me?
As you were, I noticed you.
It's just very nice to see the scaffold development because I'm a K-12 lap person. And so to see the scaffolding of, really we need to have certain things kind of taught in some grades so that way the other grades have something to build on. So it's nice to see that flow.
Thank you. I was also thinking as you talked that remember that multiplication that on the first one that she was showing, you need both the ability to get the words, translate those words that you see yourself independently, and you need to understand them once they do. This is the language comprehension. If someone were to read it to you, you'd be with them. So, all right, Effie, ready to move on to what we have here in Washington?
Okay, so this is the exciting news. So when I say we, it's a subcommittee of the literacy cadre and folks building these modules. And so there will be 6 modules. So Alicia and myself and our colleague from ESD 121 in Seattle are on the subcommittee now, but it'll be basically the work of everyone. We had support from our colleague in Wenatchee last year as we were building these and as people come in and out of the meetings to provide support. But we are looking at building these modules that show the progression of skill building towards reading and writing and comprehension, starting with oral language at the base, which includes the knowledge, vocabulary, and then learning how sentences break into words and words are broken into syllables. And then as we go deeper into phonemes and representing print and phonics and the automaticity. So you can see all those different layers. We started this as a triangle and then we thought there's way too many triangles out there. So we decided to do a stair step. And the first module is essentially done. It is in the editing stages, and eventually they will be ready to go at an asynchronous level, but first a synchronous level as we roll. We're not going to wait to finish all 6 and roll this out. We're going to start with the first one, start working with our teams, start figuring out how we want it. But it's quite comprehensive. And so my assistant right now is going through and like checking our links and those types of things with it. And so you can see how our focus is here. And this is for a Washington State plan for working on structured literacy.
So for those of you new to structured literacy, I put in the document that goes with this into the chat box. And this is just an overview of when we're talking about structured literacy, what are we talking about? So the inside is the what, the elements the kids need to know in order to be successful. And then the outside is the how. And we're going to give you some time to chat about this in a breakout room in just a moment. So Effie, you want to, I'll drive, and I think I have most of the breakout rooms set up, but do you want to talk about this alternative to the KWL? And I did click and it's not.
Did you click? I have it on my.
There we go.
There
I
it
clicked.
is. Alternative to KWL. And I was a little baffled at first because it's called RAN. And many of us are familiar with the RAN-RAS from our dyslexia screening tools. But this is the Reading and Analyzing Nonfiction by Tony, is it Steed?
Good. Yeah.
Reading and Analyzing Nonfiction. So it looks like a KWL. There's a Jamboard that Alicia will put in the chat for you. And so thinking about, and your wonderings, what I think I know about structured literacy, and then what are some things that were confirmed in the last few slides, and some misconceptions, what might be a new learning, and what might be wondering. That's our topic, right? It's structured literacy. I was like realizing, I'm like, are we a smaller? No.
So we're actually only asking you to do slide 4 right now.
Oh, that's right. It breaks it apart.
I'm gonna break this apart and say, of slide 4, you only need to do column 1.
Okay.
What do you think you know about science of reading and structural literacy? Because later on, we'll revisit this and we'll move your stickies. So wherever you put your sticky of your thought, and later on, we can move that to I was right or I was wrong on those. So that's on what I think I know. But then we also have a frame for this. So if we go to our Jamboard, this is frame 4. I see most of you on that right after our parking lot. And let me also demonstrate that you can make your own copy of this. So your group can be working on your own, especially those of you who are, I think most of you from VPS, you can create your own. So by going up here to this 3 dots, more actions, you can see make a copy as one of those options. So we're going to be working on what I think I know in your groups, as well as any wonderings you have. And then at the end, we'll be moving our sticky notes and we'll add things to new learnings. Okay, so I think I've been making the breakout rooms.
Okay.
Let me check on, and I'll pause the recording. And we didn't say about how long we want these. So team, what are your thoughts on
process and articulating why it's the development of those standards is so powerful. So planning together as a team and breaking down some of the standards and pulling out key components can be really helpful when we get into our instructional practices. And then part of this work is to understand how we can use them in all of our classroom needs, whether it's as a teacher, as a coach, as whatever you're doing within the building, as we continue to move forward in our work with our students. And then moving into fundamental assumptions. These are some assumptions that generally can be made. So I'll give you an opportunity just to take a look at them and see if there's anything there that stands out to you. Maybe there's some of the things that you felt as well, or have heard other colleagues say. And so just at the bottom there, that quote where it says, so ensuring that all students learn requires a systematic process that guarantees every child receives the additional time and support needed to learn at high levels, I think really stands out to me. So just remembering that it's not one size fits all ever. I'm not one size fit all. I learn differently than the person next to me. And our students are the same way. So when we come in as teachers, just remembering that, we need to approach the work where it will benefit them as well. So keeping our standards high, but also providing extra opportunities for our students to engage in some work with us. Then we'll move into where do we start? So the next slide is here are some, I don't want to call them the big names, but right, like these are the go-tos when it comes to thinking about what are some of the practices that we want to think about with essential skills and standards and all of that. So Marzano presents guaranteed and viable curriculum. There's a list of essential outcomes in some of the text and work that you can engage with, and the whole purpose to raise our student levels of achievement. So our kiddos feel like they are being successful in their work and having opportunities for those little small bits of success along the way. John Hattie is another big one. He's got the list of best practices and things like that. But just visible learning is a big piece of his work. And so going through and getting an opportunity to read through some of those texts or engage in some of that work. Dufour talks about the essential skills. I always mispronounce the last name, Lazati, for the clear and focused academic goals. And then we have Ainsworth for power standards. So just some of those names that if you haven't really touched, if you've seen, oh, I've seen all four, but one of those, maybe that could be one of your look into's as we continue our work moving forward. So just thinking about some of that background knowledge that we have around that. And then the why of why do we care about this? I mean, I have a book, they tell me what to teach, right? Like, why do I care? Because a lot of times that's not really helpful. When I open my curriculum book and they list like 5,000 standards that I'm going to be teaching in this unit, it's just like, it's so not helpful. So when we think about essential standards, we think about what do we really expect our students to learn. We want to think about what is it the standard is asking our students to be able to leave with when they're done with that standard. How do we know that they're learning it? So what are going to be some of those success markers for us as we go through? What are we going to be able to provide for additional support if we don't know, if we don't feel that they are getting the standard with the approach that we're making now? So how do we respond when they're not necessarily learning based on our approach? And if they already know this, then what do we do next? You know, so that's some of the things that you can do when you're planning and thinking about why do I really care about essential standards? So what are essential standards? Maybe you still don't know what those are. You know, you've been talking about them for 5 slides and they still don't know what they are. That's okay too. So this is a few bullets on what essential standards are. They're the standards that we use to guarantee all students will know and be able to do the work at the end of the year. These are standards you're going to write and use for your common formative assessments. So these will be helpful in identifying what should my common formative assessments be about. Well, they're going to be the standards that we identify as gaps or as primary focuses for our learning. You'll be able to give extra time and support. So I would always teach a whole group lesson at the beginning of my class, but when we broke up into small groups, sometimes I was hitting our essential standards depending on which group of students I was working with. So it was really nice to be able to spend some time and spend extra support with those students. Effie, do you have your hand up? Like a question? Oh, okay. I didn't know if you wanted
I'm
to.
just resting my hand.
Okay. Look, oh, maybe she wants to say anything. And if you heard background noise, I'm near the flushing system, so that there is some water. And then thinking about that you're not necessarily teaching all of this, right? So that, again, I told you to get this big long list of standards. The essential standards are the ones we're really going to key in on. And they're like basically the minimum of what we want our students to know. So you're going to spend the majority of your instructional time with these. It's what you're going to use to assess. You're going to have data-driven discussions about it because you're going to use those formative or summative assessments around that to help inform what you're going to do next. And you're going to be able to provide some enrichment opportunities and remediation around those standards. So thank you, Alicia. Ainsworth has a lovely quote here. I'll be quiet for a second. You guys can read it. So I like how this quote identifies the need for keeping our work at high level achievement. So we are not moving away from grade level text or grade level standards, but we are adding to that work. So this one, where we talk about determining the one that is more comprehensive or rigorous, is always a great way to go. So.
Well, and that rigorous one encompasses the foundational one because that's the prerequisite to access. So,
yes, thank you, Alicia.
and actually, we're that unpacking one will be in a moment when we think about prerequisites.
Mm-hmm. So there is a process for this work. So one of the first things you want to do, and this is, you could do this on your own, but it's great when you're in a team, right? Common planning or PLC times can be great times to do this. You want to identify your essential standard and start taking a look at your pacing guides, your GBCs. Another word for it's guaranteed viable curriculum. So depending on what district you're in, some districts use GBCs. And so they're just like you want to take a look at those main components as well as the standards for Common Core. And then think about what are some of the strengths and weaknesses that are occurring within your own grade level and sometimes even your school. So, you know, a lot of times you're going to notice maybe there's like the kids in the whole sixth grade are missing something, right? Like it happens. And so during that time, you can kind of identify those things. And then how do you want to work? It's great to work as a team. That is better, but you know what, if you have to do this individually, you'll be able to share that information with your team when you meet with them later. You always want to think about what is going to be the small group focus. So if you have time to get into small groups with your students, you want to think about what is going to be that focus standard based on some of the data that you have and the GBC, or the curriculum pacing guide, what would be the small group focus for the students. I always used grade level standards during our whole group time, and then would delve into, you know, do we need to do some phonics work? You know, sometimes that happens. Do we need to do some specific vocabulary work? So, and then the last part is integrating supports as identified through the formative assessments during small group learning. So as the kiddos are sharing their learning and going through the day, you're going to take chances to do check-ins and connects with them or take some formative assessment data, and that will always hopefully inform your next piece. So just some breakdown of the process. Anyone want to add in anything? Okay, I'm almost done.
Sorry, I.
Oh no, I'm done with this one. You can move to the next one.
Okay.
Oh, you're fine. Thanks. So this is a great document that I think Alicia shared because I love it. And
To take credit, I actually got it from a third grade teacher, but I love it. I think it makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's great. And the next slide, we're going to show it kind of filled in. So, but it's just a beautiful way to kind of see, you got the pyramid at the top is going to be the standard. And then underneath, you want to think about what are some of those explicit skills that the standard is asking for our students. And then underneath that, we think about what implicit or assumed skills are being brought in.
Skills.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I need to fill this out for an ELA example, but I think that this geometry one I think is nice too. When we talk about, you know, in the standard itself, notice you see recognize and draw shapes. Well, that requires that you identify these different shapes and write the attributes of them. So you see those are the things that are called out in the standard itself, but it means that in order to do those things, you need to hence you see the implied skills. You have to understand line segments and angles and open and close figures and all these things. So when you think about that, if you have a standard in reading that they are able to read with comprehension and understanding, well, that means that they're able to read. And so all those other pieces, the foundational skills that are required. Mm-hmm.
And I love a math example, especially as an ELA teacher, because one of the things that we then want to focus on are what are some of those academic vocabulary words that we're going to promote within our lessons as well to help support their math learning. So like even the word attribute, like we would do work all the time about attribute in our ELA classroom. And even the word quadrilateral we could use during one of our morning lessons, and we could break apart the word. And so we can talk about prefix, suffix, we could talk about multiple meaning words, quad, you know? So it's an opportunity for you to develop a lesson as well. If you're doing multiple classes or you have cohorts where you plan like an ELA math teacher, this is a great way to like share with each other.
You know, and you just made me think about the fact when you mentioned that yes, we usually think of it as quad because of quadruped and quadrilateral, but it's actually QUA because quart and quarter all have to do with four.
So even now.
Mhm. Okay.
Thank you.
We're gonna actually let's skip this in interest of time. I meant to skip the slide, and let's just go a little bit over assessments, and then people can stand and stretch while they're in their small groups. So how about that? This is Effie. If you ready for this, do you want us to take a quick stretch? You're muted, dear.
I need to stretch my back.
Okay.
Yeah, I need to
Let's
stand.
take a 2-minute pause. And we're recording.
Okay, so in this session, we want to talk a bit about assessments, and I work closely with our MTSS coordinators. We have 2 at the ESD in our region. We're fortunate we added a second to support the work. So our regional implementation coordinator, which all ESDs have a RIC or for supporting MTSS at the state level with technical assistance for grant districts that have applied for the grant support. And then we did add another person mid-year to support the work here. And so we work closely. We met with the district, for example, this morning, talked with the superintendent. And one of the questions always comes back to, what's your data? What are you looking at? You know, we can talk about instruction, we can talk about instructional practice, but what's the data? And what kinds of data are you looking at? So when we're thinking about assessment, we want to break that down and have that conversation and make sure schools are having that conversation. And we know it's more challenging sometimes in the secondary arena than the elementary when it comes to finding and having resources of solid data to be able to use, because the assessments just aren't as in existence and as concrete in their research for the science of reading and structured literacy. Okay, next with that. So this is one assessment breakdown. So benchmarking, you might hear the word universal screener. They'll sometimes looking at this, but typically it's 3 times a year per student, every student in reading and math, and looking at who, and the keyword is might need help, because sometimes you can get false positives or false negatives in different pieces at the beginning of the year when you're looking at summer loss, things like that. So really it's a broad screening. That might is important to think about instead of jumping right into intervention. What is our core? What does the student need? And kind of looking at them for the long term. So you might hear of assessments like DIBELS or MClass or Ames Web. There's discussion, and I'm not going to get into it now, but there is discussion on where iReady falls. We know lots and lots of buildings use iReady and how it's being used. I'm partial to in-person assignments or assessments, so we'll just put that out there. So there's different ways to use it, and it does different things, but whether it's a true universal screener is a discussion amongst folks to have. Progress monitoring. So looking at that, is my instruction working? Is what I'm doing? So that's the checking along the way. And so this is really thinking about a cross battery of assessment. And this is not including some of the others that we use. Obviously, we have formative assessments, and we have curriculum-based assessments and things, and we have our SBA. And so this is just 3 that we're looking at right now. The big picture, benchmarking, progress monitoring, checking, making sure you're monitoring the lesson on skill base. Diagnostic, that's one of my favorite, is what skills does the student possess and know? And what do they based on this diagnosis? This is where, for me, it's really exciting to be able to diagnose what the holes are in order to support students. For example, thinking about, oh, this student is struggling with multisyllabic words. I just got to notice my internet connection is unstable. So I'm going to breathe slower. And that really looking at, where are the holes, where are the gaps? If it says multisyllabic words, but really where is the breakdown? Is it maybe a vowel combination? Is it something that we can diagnose even further? So just that's a very broad, quick overview of a couple types of assessments.
I like how you're using the term diagnose instead of diagnosing with a disability. You're diagnosing needs.
The needs for instructional intervention groups, instructional practice for core. So thinking about skills to monitor and develop in the classroom. And so thinking about word reading, thinking about what it is and its ability to read phonetically regular and irregular words. Thinking about our letter sound associations, knowing how they correspond. Reading comprehension, we monitor that, especially at your secondary level. Are they understanding what they're reading? And really right here, because secondary is so content-based, just because a student is successful in reading and comprehending text in their social studies classroom doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be able to easily comprehend text in a science classroom. I mean, we look at skills, but when we look at what type of reading students are doing, so we need to, that's where it's important to come together. And fluency, we talked about that earlier in our visual that we had, the ability to read passages quickly, accurately, with proper expression. So I talked about prosody, spelling, phonetically regular and irregular words, and handwriting and written expression. So thinking about how we organize our writing, how we make our words come together and create sentences. Spelling and handwriting are often overlooked in their importance, but it is something that is a window into the language gaps that we have and the role in the spelling's role in orthographic mapping. And trying to figure out what your kids need, how to learn. And I always just want to be careful with the whole spelling piece. I was, one of those kids that sent to the back of the room and, just given random words of spelling tests, but you gotta keep in mind, this is the 70s. So we know better, we do better. We were not doing any sort of phonics-based spelling back then. But even as a classroom teacher, we had these spelling lists. And if I could go back and redo the way I taught that and what I had to do, I would probably have done it differently now. So thinking about what kind of spelling inventories we have, oral reading fluency. So going back with the analysis of assessment, how do we use this closed passages? So for comprehension. And if we're mentioning anything that you aren't familiar with the word, put it in the chat and we can find something to link to help with that. Thinking about maze passages.
You mentioned fluency. We have a whole section here that I'm going to put into the chat box. I'm going to skip the dyslexia indicators because
Okay.
I'm not sure if people
Yeah,
want
just go straight to the fluency.
Mhm.
So thinking about fluency assessments, and this is, and again, it's a shift with oftentimes your kids are readers, they're just struggling readers, as opposed to when we're working with pre-readers and that are still acquiring those basic skills at the elementary level. So adolescent readers are often expected to read text in their content classes that are too difficult for them. So keep in mind what I just said about that as far as different content areas. This guarantees failure and frustration on the part of students and teachers. So oftentimes teachers in content areas don't always see themselves as teachers of reading. And we really want to shift that approach and think about that close reading strategies, and think about how we break it apart and help students absorb the text, and really, how it's being provided, the text to them. Is it something they just have to sit and read, or are there strategies to help them comprehend as they go? By administering a simple oral fluency probe, so just like a 1-minute timing, content teachers can determine which of their students struggle to read in grade level text. And depending on the class, this doesn't have to be all kids in this case, unless it's your universal screener. If it's a progress monitoring, if it's a probe, just to find out more about a student, there's simple ways to find out how students are performing at grade level.
And that's a link that I put into the chat as well, as some from Kent and Ohio Literacy Alliance, some secondary passages and secondary procedures. Do you want me to skip the next one as well? That's from
Yeah.
that's what I thought. Let's just go on to the fluency rubric. This is from the link I just put in.
So this is really about that prosody that we were talking about. And here it's take a moment and kind of read through that and think about students that you've read with, and that the 1, 2, 3, 4. I tell the story about my daughter when she was younger, but she would read the American Girl books, and I thought they were really boring. And so, but she had been in theater at a young age, and she was able to read those books with expression and make them interesting. And so I feel like that is a really important piece in reading with enthusiasm, expression. If you listen to people read, I don't listen to books on tape, but many of you probably do. Books on tape, I don't know what it's called now. Books online, books.
Audio text.
Audio tapes, is that what we are? I don't know. But you think about the different kinds of readers and reading aloud, and what they sound like. And
All
think
right,
about that number 1, when it's slow and laborious and not phrased.
Mm-hmm.
So just a tool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Any questions on that?
I was highlighting some things that really stuck out to me: that conversational pace, appropriate rate. And I noticed, and the phrasing, good phrasing really stands out to me. And the number 4, I'm looking at what's our goal, obviously number 4, but those clause and sentence units, so that you're pausing at natural clause and phrase unit borders instead of in the middle of a phrase or clause. Mm-hmm. All right, so how do we do this, Effie?
Okay. Okay. Assess students in a quiet environment. I used to have a testing hat, but didn't make it a quiet environment. But so if at all possible, assess students in a quiet environment. Assess during small group instruction time when other students are independently engaged. I know there's less of that in secondary, but hopefully there is still some small group instruction going on. And students could be able to do that. You don't have to do everybody in that week. You can spread it out. I used to do 4 kids a day, and spread it out over time, especially if you're focusing on with secondary, like 1 or 2 classes. Don't inundate yourself and try to do 180 kids. Find one class to focus on first to start out, and think about, what is it like to read with these kids, and what is it like to try to get to one entire class, and spend that one-on-one time. It's actually going to build positive relationships with having that little bit of one-on-one time with kids too. Review the expectations for students during the assessment. and that you're reviewing data points with students during data chats to increase the motivation and follow through. And really what that means is when kids know that we have a goal, they will rise to the occasion most often, just even by telling them that. The research shows we are going to be monitoring your growth and your practice. They will, there's proof that just by no other intervention than telling them, that's it. There's something called Street Data, a book that's out there that some of you might be familiar with. And so anytime you can incorporate with that conversation with data and how to increase motivation, what do you enjoy to read? How often do you get the opportunity to read? Who reads with you? When you were a child, who read with you? What do you use reading for? How do you think it's helpful? So there's all kinds of just having that conversation to motivate students that might be less motivated. And remember that most any reading is reading. So we want to, although we need them to do the content area reading, we want to know that they're just reading. I know my daughter would ask me, Mom, can I get a rabbit? Like, why don't you look that up and read about it? Mom, can I get, so it's kind of that habit of telling any student, oh, you want to know about that? Why don't you look that up and read about it? So, yeah, those are just some tips.
Thanks, Effie. We were going to give you a breakout room to to reflect and talk about this. But I think what we'll do is we'll incorporate. So I'll pause for a moment and let you take some notes for yourself. What was already known, what was new, what was reaffirmed, and just kind of pause for a moment, let you do that. And then what I'm going to do is queue up our practice opportunity. And so we'll combine this reflection with your practice time. And so instead of having multiple smaller breakouts, we're going to do longer ones, especially since it's after 5. This will be our last time to talk to each other. And I have rearranged the groups per people's requests. So in our practice time, I don't pause much for you to talk, but I'll queue up our practicing. We have the unpacking standards in our Jamboard for you to explore. We have our oral reading fluency table here for you to explore. So this exploring together time says 2 options. We're actually going to have 4 because we had 2 earlier that we skipped. So one option is you can look through the unpacking standards, the triangle. You can talk about that. You can talk about the fluency. And then the other ones that we skipped from earlier was taking a look at the writing sample on the Jamboard, or just having an open discussion. What do you use to identify your students' strengths and needs? What do you do about fluency? What's new from what Effie was sharing and what Nina was sharing? What are some things that you want to chat about? At the same time, too, you can go to your let me pull up the Jamboard back again and take a look at what you put in for your, that's not the mouse here, come on. On your what I think I know, because I would love to have a conversation about some of those. Have we confirmed anything? Or perhaps maybe when we revisit later, going deeper into the science of reading and structured literacy, we'll come back and move some of them then. But you can add on some wonderings, some new learnings. And then you can see here 7, this is the writing sample and its translation, the triangle, and the rubric, as well as just an opportunity to add on any thoughts, reflections. Okay, so lots of opportunities for you to engage, or you can just talk as well, or you can sit this one out and just have your own private reflection. We will have a whole group sharing at the end of this breakout. So I'll pause the recording. Going to resume recording. I think one of the reasons why I said yes, we want to do group sharing. I am dying to, and we might have to leave it till next time, but I'm dying to hear about this think here. I love how someone added what I might know only matters if I can put it in practice. This evidence-based practice, a debate between actual language and just using phonics. I'm really curious about what that means, particularly because I don't see a debate. Again, it's that multiplication symbol. You need both actual language and phonics. So does anybody want to talk to that? Or should we just share out something else that was talked about in your groups? And we can leave this till next time. Okay, nobody's going on that. So let's hear from one of the groups from something that you talked about that you've been processing throughout our session today.
Okay, so I will speak because
Thank you,
No.
Ken.
so in our group, so our one of our sub goals is K through 12 literacy improvement. So the goal is 100% of our kids will make improvement in their literacy. So
Mhm.
that's pretty intimidating for a lot of our staff who really want to do things and meet goals, but are also not sure how to do it, especially our secondary folks. And so one of the things we're talking about is how if you have the screener, so we do iReady, but then if you have the screener, the automatic thing that we thought we would do would be ORF. However, there's like, do you do that at a secondary level? Okay, I'm seeing yes, and we have kind of we have like, well, is fluency necessarily important when they okay, well, yeah, okay, more. I'm seeing head nods.
So Kathleen, when I was teaching high schools, when I did my dissertation, and I looked at fluency for high school freshmen, and the question of is it important? Yes. Now, the question of how it. So, that's one of the reasons why, if you'll notice that what we shared with you with the rubric didn't say how many words per minute. It said prosody, it said appropriate rate. And what I would really stress with that appropriate rate is around 100 words per minute. That even if you look at the oral reading fluency norms by Jan Hasbrook, and it goes up to 100 and ridiculousness. If you've heard her speak, she says really over 100, too much over 100, and you're going to lose comprehension. So there's kind of the sweet spot is 100 something. You know, it's you don't want to be too fast that the kids can't understand what they're reading, and you don't want to be too slow that they're struggling more on the decoding than on the content itself. So yes, there is a role for oral reading fluency, but I'd say it shifts in the secondary.
And when you do, or if you create opportunities for data conversations to happen, so you have places now where you can make those data plans with students, you could do data chats with them, and you can, or I've orphed entire classes, like, you know, you do small group, or you get everybody during a day, they have to do something, and you just pull the students individually during that time. So there's a way to make it work also when you have so many kids to orph, and be happy to talk about that more as we continue.
And we will be revisiting all of this. I do apologize, it's 5:30. I need to go. Effie and Nina can stay. But as you'll notice in November, we're going to be talking about the science of reading on a broader scale and structured literacy. And then we're going to hone in on the decoding and encoding in secondary level, what that looks like, and then the language comprehension in February. So we're going to be revisiting all these things, but I think that's a really great place to start, Kathleen. So thank you. Thank you to all of you. And we definitely hope that you have something that you're taking with you, whether it be a what, a so what, or a now what. And I will go quickly to our just a couple of opportunities, asynchronous courses you can take. I'll put that into the chat for us.
These are great. You can do them on your own time, and they're modules. Please, they're awesome. Just share them with people.
Lindsay, the slides I share on a case-by-case basis because they're not ADA accessible. However, we have the resources that we'll put all those into it. All of these resources that we're putting into the chat are on our secondary SOR resources that we shared earlier, and we'll grab those for you at the top, and I'll put that back into for you. Thank you for my partners and all of everyone's contributions, because really the more we all work together, the more we learn from each other. So thank you all for a great afternoon, and I will get this resource for you for anybody who hasn't had it yet as soon as it comes up.
Alicia, you can transfer like host to me. I can hang out for a few minutes if people want to have any questions or anything.
Great. You are, as a co-host, I think if I leave, I can just transfer it to you as a